This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network. The Power Play Post Show is on the air, covering minor league hockey since 2003, and now covering the Binghamton Black Bears with news, reactions, and in-depth interviews only heard here. And now from the Box Studios in Kirkwood, New York, here is your host of the Power Play Post Show, Bob Howard.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for November 2nd, 2023. This is Season 13, Episode number 4, Lucky Season number 13. And, of course, this is Episode 389 in the long-running Power Play Post Show. Welcome, everybody, to the show. I am your host, Bob Howard. Thank you very much for joining me this week. Listen, if you're joining me this week, I'm pretty sure it's not because of me, but because of the guest that I'm having on. I stepped away a little bit from the Binghamton Black Bears interviews, and today I'm going to be interviewing somebody that a lot of people who are probably listening to this show already know. Great guy. Cannot wait to get to that. But first, the Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcasts and subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to the Facebook group and search for, or just go to Facebook, search for the Power Play Post Show, and share any of our show posts to all your friends. Check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. And this week, on this episode of the Power Play Post Show, host, founder, and creator of the Fed League Flash, Gary Ryan. Very excited for you guys to hear this. It's a long interview, so if you need to listen to it in a couple different takes, absolutely, I completely understand. That's why I'm going to keep my segment short. I talked to Gary about a lot of topics from Binghamton hockey history, because he's, like me, been around the Binghamton hockey world for a very long time. And we talked to him about the Continental Division in the Fed, and a couple other things. So definitely something you want to check out. All right. So my three topics for this week, very quick, very concise. I want to just go over it. One is silly. One is important to the Black Bears, of course, right? The last three games. And, of course, we'll talk about Adam Johnson as well. And my thoughts, my deep thoughts about the tragedy with Adam Johnson. So let's get right into it. How did the Black Bears do in their first 3-3 series of the year? Well, I think they did pretty good. Let's be perfectly honest. In the first game, they played on Thursday night, so it was a Thursday night game in Elmira. Not a lot of fans there, but that's to be expected. It's a Thursday. I'll be honest with you. Anywhere in upstate New York, you play a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday, it's not going to be high attendance. Now, sometimes Wednesdays used to be a staple, kind of like in minor league hockey, like for the American Hockey League. We saw a lot of Wednesday games in Binghamton and Wilkes-Barre. It's definitely like that midweek. It seemed to be a good place. Thursdays and Tuesdays, good for the NHL. I don't know if it's really good for minor league hockey. So, but either way, they played that game. Binghamton did lose the game in overtime. This was a 4-3 final in the favor of the River Sharks. Kept Binghamton without a regulation loss still at this point, 4 games in, which was pretty good. Austin Thompson scored. Dustin Jesso scored on the power play. Nikita Ivachkin scored on the power play as well. So you had 2 power play goals in this game. First 2 power play goals of the season for the Binghamton Black Bears. I thought personally that this was a really good game, and I thought both teams matched up very well in this game. So Elmira is better than they were last year. Straight up, they're just going to be a better team. I think Watertown's a better team too, and we played them twice and we beat them twice. But they're just, the competitive level in the Empire Division this year is much better than what Elmira, the Mammoth, what Watertown, and what Delaware provided for Danbury and Binghamton this year. I think Danbury is probably a little bit less of a team, and those other teams are a little bit more of a team. In goal for the Binghamton Black Bears was, get down to it, was Nolan Egbert. He gave up 4 goals. He had 18 saves on 22 shots. Played, obviously, 61.04 minutes-wise. I thought he played well. He had a couple moments where, maybe he was giving too much up top high. But that's just the way I think Nolan and Sam Levici are going to be, just because they're smaller guys. And when they get down to that butterfly, there's a lot of space up above them and everything, even though Sam is really good with his glove. Very good with his glove. Attendance for that Elmira game was 712. Again, a really good game. Probably the best game of the 3 games between the for the Binghamton Black Bears. Probably the best game that we saw being played. The next game was in Binghamton. This was against the Watertown Wolves. Again, more power play goals were scored. Binghamton scored 9 goals, and the power play really came alive. Brendan Stako scored a power play goal. Ivashkin got another goal. So that's a good thing right there. We started off the game with a power play goal, but then immediately, a few minutes later, Ivashkin gets on the board again, which is good. We did give up another shorthanded goal. That was 3 in 3 games. 1 game last weekend, then Thursday night and Friday night. So 3 shorthanded goals, and that's a concern for a lot of people. But it's a hard balance, right? If you're playing your power play a certain way and it starts clicking, you might give up stuff. And it's difficult to fix that without possibly hurting the power play. Now, again, there's positioning. There's a way you can position players on the ice that can alter that. But if you don't have the right players to play that type of positioning, it's not going to work. Dustin Jesso got another power play goal in this game. So your 3 power play goals for Binghamton were Stanko, let's see here, Dustin Jesso, and then Austin Thompson. Okay, so 3 power play goals in this game. We did give up 5 goals to the Watertown Wolves. Again, I think the competitive level of the Empire Division is much better. Only 26-77 in Binghamton for this game. A little concerned about the attendance so far in the first 3 games for Binghamton. We haven't seen a sellout yet. I do know that next weekend the Word of Life is coming. So that's not next weekend, but in 2 weekends. So not this weekend, the weekend after. Word of Life is going to be at one of the games. So it will be close, if not be a sellout. So 9-5 in this game. Brendan Stako was the number 1 star. He had a goal and 5 assists. Just crazy numbers for Brendan Stako. It must be the mustache. I'm telling you right now, the Binghamton Black Bears have some guys with some mean-ass mustaches, and I think that's helping them. Connor Smith had 2 goals in this game. Nikita Ivashkin had 2 goals in this game. Nikita does not have a mustache. I have a feeling he probably can't grow a good one. I'm not picking on him. I'm just saying, I just got this feeling. I'm a dude. I can tell when other dudes can grow mustaches or not. But Connor Smith and Brendan Stanko have 2 pretty good mustaches as well. All right, so on Saturday night, because I want to get through this real quick so we can get over to the interview with Gary Ryan. We have another number 1 star for Brendan Stanko in the game up in Watertown. Binghamton did win this game 5-3. Now, Connor Smith and Dustin Jesso were not in attendance, or not in attendance. They were not playing. They got permission from Andreas Johansson. I don't know what Jesso was doing. I'm pretty sure we know what Connor Smith was doing, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But Brendan Stanko had a goal, 2 assists. Jesse Anderson had 3 assists. I'd like to see him get on the scoreboard if we could. Binghamton also got another power play goal from Nikita Ivashkin, and they got one from Tyson Kirkby. Now, I mentioned the power play goals because in the first 3 games, no power play goals. In the last 3 games, they've gotten 6 power play goals. So they're averaging a power play goal per game now just because of this outbreak that they've had. So that's good. They've kind of worked on it. They fixed it. Hopefully it's fixed that if you're going to be getting 5, 6, 7 power plays, you need to be scoring on 1, 2, or 3 of them to be successful. And so far, that has gone well so far for Binghamton. Nolan Egbert was in this game as well. We did not see Connor Mack in a game this weekend. I'm not sure why. I do talk off record sometimes with Coach Sherwood. I will openly admit that. I have not talked to him about that. There is the Gavin Yates information that is out there that he was released from Knoxville in the SPHL, and he's potentially working his way to Binghamton. You might be hearing that sometime today, whether or not they're going to sign him and he signed or failed to report. I can tell you right now, Gavin Yates wants to be here. Coach Sherwood wants him. And it's just a matter of him getting here and being, he has to either sign and it has to be announced on Thursday, today, as you're listening to this, or he'll be set up for failed to report, that's just to make him inactive, essentially, and hopefully they can get him up here. Now, one of the things, Gavin Yates doesn't have good transportation, so it's that simple. He just has to get up here. I'm not sure what's going on with that situation. That is the only update that I have on it, so we're going to probably know by sometime midday on Thursday the Gavin Yates situation, which means somebody is going to get released. When I talk to Coach, I don't always ask those questions because if I have that information, I can't give it to you because, it doesn't really make sense. So either way, Gavin Yates potentially coming to the Black Bears. But they had a great 3 games and 3 nights last week. They are still undefeated in regulation. They've had 2 overtime losses. They've got 4 wins. All 4 of those are regulation wins. That's the reason why they look as pretty as they do in the standings right now, which is Binghamton has played 6 games. They're 4-0-2 with 14 points. And Danbury has 3 wins, 3 losses. Only 2 of those are in regulation, so they only have 8 points. Elmira 2-1. They are in 3rd place, and Wytheville has a win, and so does Watertown. Those are your 2 bottom teams in the Empire Division. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Cowboy Connor Smith. Apparently, he's a real cowboy. I did not know this. I'll be frank with everybody. Some of you probably knew. Maybe you learned a little bit about Connor Smith. You've met him. You've talked to him. There have been Booster Club meetings. Well, I think only just one so far this week where the players probably were there. But there are other ways for you fans to find out this. I did not ask this in the first meeting that I had with Connor Smith and talking to him on media day. I did not know he was a real cowboy. I should have asked. I should have asked. In the last couple weeks, I knew that we were calling him Cowboy Connor Smith. I'll be honest, folks. I honestly thought that's because he was a good shooter on the ice, right? So Cowboy Connor Smith. I did not know. Now, I'm telling you right now, Brooks Hill, if you're listening to this, you and me, we gotta plan something. We gotta sit down with Connor Smith, wear some cowboy hats, do an interview, and talk about this because I think the fans would really want to know. I know I want to know. I mean, this is so cool. I did not know this, and usually I do an in-depth interview like I did with JT Walters last week and even the week before. Had no idea, but he has won a buckle. They win buckles in that sport and everything, and I want to talk to him about this. This is really interesting to me. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I love cowboy movies. I love everything about cowboys, and I didn't know that there's one here. And I should have known. Maybe I should have known. I don't know. But either way, Connor Smith won a buckle in a tournament, and he is now Cowboy Connor Smith for the rest of his life. I'm always going to say that. I'm just going to say Cowboy and see what he says. Let's get to a serious note before we get to Gary Ryan. And folks, I just want to say that the first thing I want to say about Adam Johnson is that one of the things that I have a hard time with is when I find out players have either suffered a injury, a mental issue. I get to know these players. I get to know the people in the business because of what I've done for so long. I've talked to players. Even in the time when I did not host this show, I still talk to a couple of the players online. One of the people that I truly love with all my heart is Bobby Robbins, who played here in Binghamton, and just we just bonded. You know, he came on the show multiple times, and one of the last episodes of the Power Play Post Show, and this brought this up with the Adam Johnson tragedy. Bobby was so upfront and personal and just amazing on this show about his mental health issues. And this is all because of concussions in hockey. And it made you think, yeah, maybe fighting isn't all that great because it messes up these guys. He played a few games up with the Boston Bruins. He retired after those few games because the concussions were so bad. He gets on a plane and starts heading towards, I think it was Sidney Crosby's head doctor, who he's gone to for concussions. And he got into a state where he wished the plane would have tumbled down. That's tough, man. That's tough. That's tough to hear from people you get to know. I never met Adam Johnson. But the reason why I tell you this story is the reason why I didn't watch the video and I will not watch the video is because I have such a unique perspective and connection with the players that I've interviewed. I don't want to see one of their own in an accident like that where the result was that he passed away. Protection on the ice, the safety of players has to be number one, not just for the officials and the teams and the leagues, but even the players. The players have to protect. I am not putting any blame on the player that did this. We'll let whatever investigations happen. I'm sure it was a complete accident, but I don't know. I will take the liberty here and say that I am just going to hope and pray that that's what it was. I feel for Adam Johnson's family. I do. I feel for his fans. I feel for the people in Wilkes-Barre in Ontario, California, where he played a good amount of his minor league hockey time. He played like 15 so games, whatever it was in the NHL. He wasn't an NHL player. He was more of a minor league guy. And I feel for my friends in Wilkes-Barre. I feel for the LA Kings organization, which I color commentated for many games with Manchester. There is a connection there for me, a special bond with those that organization. Of course, with Wilkes-Barre and Jason Iacona, who does Chirps from Center Ice, great blog in Wilkes-Barre. I feel for those people. And out of respect for players and the people that I've interviewed, I'm not going to watch that video, but my heart goes out to those guys. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Let's get on to some better stuff. Coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show, the Fed League Flash by Gary Ryan. We'll talk to him. Pretty long interview. Really good stuff. You can hear all the great topics that we talked about. So coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show is Gary Ryan from the Fed League Flash. We'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
You're listening to the Power Play Post Show. Here is another Power Play Post Show interview exclusive with Bob Howard.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. I'm very excited to have this gentleman on. He's been around the rink in Binghamton many, many times himself, and I'm very excited to really get down to talk to him about what he does and why he does it, and even talk about the Binghamton Black Bears and Binghamton history a little bit. He comes to us from the Fed League Flash. It's on every single platform, just like we are, except for we're not on YouTube. He is. But the Fed League Flash with Gary Ryan, an excellent, excellent show. Gary, thank you very much for coming on the show. I've been waiting to do this for a while now, and I'm kind of really glad that you decided to come on with me today.
Well, this is awesome. I really appreciate it, and I am also a big fan of the Power Play Post Show myself, so there we go.
Well, that's good. That makes two of us. So we got at least two fans of the Power Play Post Show, which is great. The Fed League Flash, it's a really interesting thing because one of the pieces of advice I got a long time ago from Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators, was cut that damn show down under an hour. But what you do so great is you keep it right around that 15-minute mark for anything, whether it's on Facebook, Spotify, or on YouTube and everything. Talk to me about why 15 minutes? Why did that work for you?
Well, first of all, I work full-time, so I've got to watch how much time that I am putting into this. But second, it's an unfortunate characteristic that most of us, and I'm sure a lot of this has to do with the internet, we just don't have a long attention span. Once we reach a certain point in time, we usually say, okay, enough of this, I'm bored. And so I just wanted to make sure that I could get everything together and just hammer it out in a very short, concise period of time.
And it's probably why you listen to the Power Play Post Show while you're driving your truck, right? Because you're not going to turn it off. You're just going to listen to me until I'm done, and then you move on to probably another podcast. So let's talk a little bit about the Fed League Flash. Why did you decide to do the Fed League Flash? Because you were doing something that was more towards the Binghamton Black Bears and everything, and then you kind of changed to kind of really talk about the whole league. And what got you into just doing this just in general, even when you started doing just about the Binghamton Black Bears?
Well, really, the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to do the Black Bears initially and talk to Andreas about what I wanted to do. And the main reason is because I thought this was kind of ironic. The FPHL is basically catering itself to the social media audience, and yet there's not a lot out there. There's 3 or 4 different people that are doing this, but I really saw that the internet, or social media specifically, was really underutilized, and so that became the mode of transportation, I guess you could say, as far as how I wanted to do this. Started off just with Spotify, and I started talking about just Binghamton, had a show called This Week with the Black Bears, and as time went on, I would start researching, who's the Black Bears playing tonight? Well, okay, let's look at Watertown. Let's find out who their big players are, what makes them tick. And so then I started getting interested in all that. I love the Black Bears. They're my team. Sure. But I love the game even more than a specific team. The game itself is just such a thrill for me to watch. And so I really got excited about learning about the different players and coaches and the organizations. And so that's kind of like why I changed focus.
Now, with the Fed League Flash, I've noticed that some of the information that you give out, you obviously have to talk to people within the league. Have you gotten pushback from anybody within the league when you try to reach out to them? How helpful has coaches and GMs been to you getting some information that you need? Or has there been an equal amount of pushback, or really have they been favorable to you asking questions and them providing some answers?
99% of the time, it's very, very positive.
Nice.
And they're just glad to have somebody that's talking about, again, their team as well as the whole league. Because, again, the FPHL still is relatively young. It's been 14 seasons, or this is the 14th season. And in some ways you can say, oh, that feels like a long time, but in comparison to the other established leagues, it's still the baby on the block. And so being able to get more attention to, hey, we've got this nice little league here called the FPHL, here's some information about it, that really excites a lot of people. Now, it is unfortunate that every now and then there is some not really favorable news that comes out.
Sure.
And so there's been a little bit of a trapeze act going on with that sometimes, because I feel like, well, this is important. People need to know about this, but nobody wants to be shown in an unfavorable light.
Right.
So it gets to be tough. But so that's why I try, as much as possible, I try and focus on the positives of what's going on, and try and share the good attributes of the different people who are involved in the league.
No, I totally understand that. I mean, the 11 years that I talked about the American Hockey League, I really tried to keep it as mostly positive. I think I had one negative interview where it caused a little stir within the league, and people were looking at me differently and talking to me. But within a couple show episodes later, everybody was back to, oh, it's Bob, it's the Power Play Post Show, it's the the only person talking about us, so let's keep him happy and everything. So I completely understand that. But unfortunately, sometimes when you are trying to, I don't want to say be credible, because it's really hard to say, because like when I do what I do, I critique the team and how they play sometimes, and I do interviews to get people to get to know people, like we did with JT Walters last year and stuff, and I did that all through my AHL time as well. But sometimes there are hard things to have to talk about. Nikita Ivachkin last year, that's a hard thing to talk about, because in some cases the news isn't out there what happened. So you have to kind of talk about it in a way where you sound credible, but you don't sound like you're beating him down, or you're beating the league down, or you're beating the Black Bears down, or whatever it might be. You're not. So I think it's a hard position to be in when you're trying to provide information and news, but without sounding like, well, this bad thing happened and this is negative, and without, because you really do want to continue to talk to the general managers and the coaches and the people that you can get some insight and some information from. You want to be able to continue to do that. So it's a tough thin wire to walk across.
Yes, it is.
So let's talk a little bit about the FPHL versus what we've seen in Binghamton before, right? So obviously Binghamton it was known as a mainstay for the AHL, but of course we had the North American Hockey League here, the slapshot years, as I always like to call them. And then, of course, there was the UHL here, which I think is the only reason why people know Danbury, for that matter, and everything, because of the Danbury Trashers and everything. But when you look at the last 50 years of Binghamton hockey and, the AHL, the UHL, and now the FPHL, what strikes out to you the most? Because, again, we won the championship in 2011. We were in two other finals, one in the North American Hockey League in 81-82, in the AHL with the Binghamton Whalers. What strikes you about the FPHL coming compared to what we've had here in the past?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's obviously not... It's not the top skill that you see in the NHL. It's not. I mean, it's very good hockey for what it is, and that's the thing I think it's important to look at. Remember, you've got to take it for what it is.
Right.
And these are, for the most part, these are people that are taking their first step into professional hockey. Mm-hmm. You compare that to what we got accustomed to with the AHL for the longest time, and being able to watch players like Ulf Samuelsson, Ty Domi, and Ray Emery and Jason Spezza and whatnot, and you knew their careers were going someplace. But at the same time, the dream sometimes gets lost for a lot of players that will make it up to the AHL level, and that's really about as far as they're going to go. I can specifically remember John Mokosak for the Whalers. And he was a really great guy. I got to talk to him a couple times. At that time, I was a teenager. And, you know, the last year that he was here, because he played here for parts of 4 seasons, you could just see that dream had kind of dissolved and dissipated a little bit. Whereas now I look at what we have here with the FPHL, and I think most of the people that are playing are realistic about where they're going to go or how far they can go. But at the same time, they're just having such a blast playing hockey, being involved in the game, and being a part of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what really drew me into it. For the longest time, I would say I was an AHL snob. I'm not going to watch anything more than this. And on a whim, I turned into the YouTube podcast, or the stream, for the first Black Bears game. And I thought, well, yeah, okay, I'll check it out. And after about half of the game, I was hooked. And I just saw that raw energy and that passion with the players. And it reminded me of, pond hockey growing up and just enjoying the game and playing for the love of the game, and nothing else really mattered.
Right.
And that really is what drew me in. And I took that and I thought, I want to share this with people.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I finally went. I hadn't been to a game in Binghamton. It's probably the longest span in a very long time that I hadn't been to a game since the Wednesday game, March 20th, Devils. I can't remember exactly who they played. It might have been Rochester. We might have beat them, which thankfully. And I hadn't been to a game until last Saturday. And I had heard, obviously, stories from people about how vibrant the crowd is. Like, in the final 4 years of the Senators and the 3 years that we actually had the Devils playing at the arena, fans would sit with their hands underneath their asses, and they didn't do anything. They didn't cheer. They didn't chant. They didn't go after the referee like they used to. Maybe Frank Slack did. Maybe a few of the guys in 21, because I'm telling you right now, the 21 guys, because I sat in 21. Whenever I was not in the press box, I was sitting in 21. And I can tell you right now, I know those guys, and I mean, they'd buy pizzas for the backup goaltenders and everything. They were trying to fatten them up for some reason. But my point is that when I went to this Devils game, there was only 3,100 and some odd people there, 27 people, I think it was. It was louder than some of the Devils and Senators games that I went to the last 6 years, and everything. So to me, there's a different energy here, because I think the player and I think the community and the team are one again, like they used to be. Like the early days of the Senators. The Ranger years were phenomenal for fan engagement with the teams and the team. I mean, there are Ranger fans in Binghamton, New York. I mean, I hate to tell MSG and the NHL, we're not a Buffalo Sabres market. Stop throwing the Sabres down at us. We are a New York Rangers market, and we will always be that kind of market and everything. But they don't have that. So it just feels like it's different, like it's old times, like it's North American Hockey League time and Ranger times and early Senators times, and that's great. And when I saw that with 3,100 people and they were cheering louder at certain points in that game than I had seen in 10 years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I never went to a Dusters NAHL game. I was just too young.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And and I really honestly didn't really catch on to hockey until the Miracle on Ice. But I've seen some of the old footage of the crowds at the old Duster games taking on Johnstown Jets or the Erie Blades or whoever. And, I feel like the energy that we have and the fans have towards the Black Bears, I really feel like that has returned for the first time in 40-plus years.
Sure. Agreed. So let's talk a little bit more about the Fed before we move on to some other things I want to talk to you about. What's the thing you like the most about covering the Fed at this point?
I really enjoy just being able to get to learn about these players. And again, I doubt we're probably going to ever see them in the NHL.
Sure.
But even the best, J Mac and Gus Ford and whatnot.
But we had one goaltender play in the Fed that's played in the NHL.
Well, true, yeah, that is true.
So it has happened. It's just not going to be as likely. But the other thing we got to remember here is these guys are all played some form of college hockey or junior hockey, almost all of them. Or, in like Nikita Ivachkin's, he played a little bit of junior, in North Carolina, but played in Russia. And there are some very, talented, minor leagues in Russia that kids at an early age start playing in. And you can see the skill in Nikita. But I guess my point is that there are players that their skill level is better than what people try to label this league as a beer league. Beer league guys are not playing college hockey. I'm sorry, they're not.
No. And that's, I'm starting to see that with the FPHL, even just really watching it the last 3 years.
Yeah.
For as long as we've had the Black Bears. That's when I started watching the FPHL. And the level of talent has been raised exponentially just in 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I can understand now why it seems like half the league got call-ups to SPHL and ECHL camps this year.
A lot of them did.
Because they're getting that good.
Yeah. And like Jake Schultz, I mean, you're referring to like a player like Jake Schultz who's gone up there and appears to stay and whatnot. It is, and that's kind of fun. I think that's good, and I think if we can see a player start here, somehow have some sort of great run in the FPHL, and then even maybe get that AHL contract, because if they do that, that really shows the success. And now, same thing with the SPHL. That's all they're looking to do as well, is just have a few of those guys do so well that they make it up to not just the ECHL, but make it up to the AHL, because I think that would really prove one of the best things about sports in North America, and I think the MLB and the NHL have done it right for a long time. They have utilized the minor leagues as best as anybody can. And honestly, let's be honest, the NBA, it's taken them a while to really get the D-League. I think it's the D-League, right? Yeah, the D-League, where it's minor league basketball really going and getting it going strong. So it's very interesting. Talk to me a little bit about your frustrations about covering this league, because I know for me, I'm always looking for information from the league, and I don't see that. And I'm upfront and honest, and I could take the hit on this from Don Kerman if he wants to yell at me, or Sarge or whatever. I just don't feel like the website gets updated enough with like suspensions. Now, earlier this season, they did announce a suspension, and I hope they continue that process. One of the things I think has changed that's a good, that is still a frustration, is 10-minute misconducts being thrown out like it's Halloween candy, right? And we know that was a big deal. But is there anything that kind of frustrates you about covering this league?
There's three really specific things, and I can just kind of list them off. The first is communication breakdowns. We see it so many times where if you're watching, if you're watching the finals last year and Danbury taking on Carolina,
Yep.
and you had the infamous clock mishap there, but for the longest time that evening there was something posted on the Fed web page, but you knew, well, that's not how it actually happened because I watched the game.
Yeah, me too.
And it just seems like the communications from off-ice official to whoever handles the website isn't always there.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is the lack of maintenance on the web page. I just wish that someone, I don't know if they have someone who's dedicated full-time to just maintaining the website. If they don't, they need somebody. Or, maybe they need some help. I don't know. But the other frustrating thing is the FPHL has become so afraid of anything that could possibly be considered negative. You see, Baton Rouge signed so-and-so, but then you don't know if they've gotten released or when or the circumstances behind it. Not that you want dirt per se, but you'd like to know, well, what happened? And it just kind of gets kind of fluffed over. And so then I'm sitting there trying to get as much information as I can, and I don't have it. And so that gets to be a little frustrating sometimes.
Is there a third thing?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the third.
Okay.
The communication breakdowns, the maintenance of the website, and then not addressing the hard things.
Gotcha.
Or the difficult things.
Yeah, I think for me, it's really the communication that we do not get from the Fed. Just normal league things. I think the transactions have gotten better over the last couple of years. Them reporting transactions, although I think they make it a little confusing, and they could clear up the way the transactions. But it's a smaller league that has to trip over itself about 1,000 times before it gets things right. That's just normal. Listen, the AHL did that back in the 30s and the 40s. The SPHL did it their first 10 years. They tripped over themselves multiple times. It is just normal, and they obviously don't want to listen to us and say, hey, you know what? These two schmucks, they know what they're talking about and whatnot. Let's move on. Continental Division. I don't get to talk about the Continental Division that much. I obviously follow a few things online, and I watch a couple games when I can and everything. But let's talk about the Continental Division. I know you said it already on the Fed League Flash over the past week. Who is the best team in the Continental Division?
And I have to apologize as I lead into this to Binghamton Black Bears fans, but Columbus is not just the best team in the Continental. I feel like they are the best team in the league. Now, they really didn't get to show it really fully as far as what they're capable of because they took on Baton Rouge, and that's not a diss on Baton Rouge. Their time is going to come eventually.
Right.
But Columbus, you look at their roster, and this is a team that I feel could play in and finish at the top of the SPHL.
That good.
Fantastic team. I don't see many weaknesses in them.
Okay. Interesting. See, I find it interesting that you picked Columbus to be the best team, and they're number one in your power rankings, yet they're never going to play the Binghamton Black Bears this season, so we don't really know.
That drives me nuts.
We don't know who's going to be really the best team. I'm just saying we can't we won't know.
Not until the finals, hopefully.
Yes, exactly. All right. Who will be the sleeper team in the Continental Division? And don't say Carolina. Don't say Carolina.
They could be. They have enough players that have come back from last year. Plus, they've got some new new talent that's kind of been bled in, but they're always a threat. Just like the Rochester Americans back in the day, they always somehow, some way find a way of winning, and so they're going to be always hanging around, kind of peeking over the shoulder type of thing. But I also think Motor City is going to be a big factor this year because I look at Motor City and I see they don't have any real stars on their team except for Trevor Babin. Everybody knows Trevor Babin.
Yes.
But they play as such a cohesive unit as a team. They don't need a superstar. They just find ways of putting themselves together and grinding out wins. And every game so far as they have played, they've started off behind and they've come back to win. So yeah, I think they could be a big producer of noise in the playoffs.
Now, follow-up question. Hopefully Scott Brand is listening to this podcast and everything. And if you are, Scott, this is much respect to you. Can Scott Brand bring frickin' fans into that damn arena? Because it's a beautiful, I think, 2,500-seat arena there. And I would love to see that place full someday. And I know that the first game got under 900 fans and everything. And he actually joked about himself, I think, a little bit on one of the things, like, they brought in this guy and, boy, does he suck or something like that, and everything. Can Scott Brand, do you think he can, because he did really well in Carolina, do you think he can get Motor City on track fan-wise? Because it's a hard market in Fraser to be right next to Detroit and try to sell single-A hockey to a major league fan base.
Yeah. I gotta give him credit, as well as Nick Fields, who's still doing a lot of the globe trotting as far as promotion and whatnot. They're trying. They're giving it their darndest, and I was really glad to see that before the season began, they got press coverage on every local network's morning show. Just, hey, we've got a team here, we all love the Red Wings, but, we got this great little team here in Fraser, nice arena. I hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so. I see, if fans finally start coming to the games, and please, Motor City fans, please go to the games.
Yes.
I could see them being one of the, I would classify them as a cornerstone team of the league, kind of like what you have right now with markets like Binghamton and Carolina and Columbus. I mean, solid fan bases there, and
as well as Danbury,
get behind the team,
as well as Danbury.
Danbury too.
Yeah, I think that's the four teams that are the cornerstone of the Fed right now.
Yeah, I would agree, but I certainly hope so. I'm pulling for them to be able to get 2,500 fans in there. That would be awesome.
My next two questions kind of blur together, so we'll talk about them all at once and everything. On the Fed League Flash, if the fans have followed it, and I'm sure they have, you've talked many times, especially on the YouTube side of it. And by the way, I just have to ask you right now: are you using the notepad, or do you have the whiteboard with you right now? Is the whiteboard near you? I need to know this.
Well, no, the whiteboard. I'm upstairs. The whiteboard is downstairs.
Oh,
but yeah, the whiteboard that became my tip of the cap, so to speak, to the hockey guy. That's really who I patterned what I'm doing here. That's who I patterned this whole thing after. If you go to YouTube and look up the hockey guy, he covers the NHL. But he's in this room full of all sorts of memorabilia, but he always has this giant whiteboard with him, and everything's on the whiteboard. And
I love it.
That's his high tech optics. But I just kind of love that simplistic approach, just having a little board there. And
well, I think the whiteboard is a little bit of like a second star to your show, to you. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the southern part of this country and about southern expansion. It's something you've talked about a lot, and yes, you've talked about Danville and everything. And I know there's obviously the news coming out tomorrow, which will be Wednesday. Right? Yeah, today's Tuesday. Yeah, so Wednesday, and the show will be airing on Thursdays. So fans, if you want to know about Danville, Gary will probably be talking about it within the next couple of Fed League flashes about how everything went in Danville. But let's talk about Southern expansion because, of course, the SPHL is down there. Are there cities that you think that the Fed can go into that can compete with the SPHL? Because I think that's a tough thing to kind of balance. And obviously we have Mississippi and Baton Rouge that are going to, I think, hopefully do well and well enough. I mean, Baton Rouge has already had a couple good numbers and everything, but is there other cities in the South that the Fed can move into with their business model that can be successful, especially going up against the SPHL?
Well, we can speculate, and I've speculated on where I feel some of the good markets would be.
Right.
Problem is, of course, I'm not on the. I'm not sure if they call themselves expansion committee or whatever they call themselves. I'm not on that committee.
You mean Barry Soskin committee?
Yeah. We're going to kind of lead into that a little bit, but. There's three big factors to look at before you just jump into a market. And I have to say one thing that I think the Fed has really improved upon is doing a better job as far as vetting potential ownership groups. We've had a couple of mishaps, but you don't have teams folding midway through the season because they're not making money. But ownership group is important. Of course, the facility is an up-to-date facility. Do they have an ice plant? Do they want hockey there? There's all these different things to consider, and so again, just speculating.
Sure.
I think that there are a couple of places where we could kind of put a new team in and start. Now, I know Don has looked at Beaumont, Texas.
Okay.
I think that would be a mistake. I think it's just too far outside of the footprint.
Yeah.
I think you're spreading yourself too thin. But there has been some exploratory talks of Mobile, Alabama,
right,
which would be really great for Biloxi and Baton Rouge to have somebody else close by. There's a nice facility in Augusta, Georgia, that used to have the Augusta Lynx.
Yeah, I remember them.
The
Yep.
ECHL, and they had an SPHL team as well. Neither of those leagues really could make things work in there, so maybe explore there. There's a nice 6,600 seat arena sitting unused in Louisville, Kentucky. There's a lot of different places that potentially a team could go, but you still have to make sure that you have all your ducks lined up in a row, so you're not just going to throw caution to the wind, go in there and, this was a mistake. You definitely don't want that.
Agreed. And I think the hang-up with Danville is that they don't want to subscribe to a 3-year deal with somebody, but realistically, you can't go into a contract with somebody for a year and think you're going to make money, because I think even probably the first year of the Binghamton Black Bears, Andreas probably just made a little bit of money or broke even, but it takes a couple years to kind of build up, because you build up your marketing, you build up your sales force, all that type of stuff takes a little bit of time. You can't do it in less than 12 months and think oh, this is going to be a success and we can re-sign another contract. So I think the thing with Danville will be interesting that we'll find out by time this show airs is whether or not they're going to say yes to a 3-year contract, because I think that's really what it's going to take.
Right. And the other problem here is, now I don't know what transpired in the 10 years that the Dashers were there.
Sure.
That was before I really started getting to the Fed. It's become somewhat obvious that the arena board would rather deal with somebody besides Barry Soskin. And that seems to be one of the points where this is all kind of hanging up on. And that's the other thing is, I mean, I'm very glad that Barry Soskin is a part of the league, because the league's strength would not be where it is now if it were not for him. However, I think you put too many eggs in one basket, something happens down the road, it could have a very cataclysmic domino effect. Yeah. And I really don't want to see that. So obviously, I think a key to any kind of expansion, no matter where it is, you want to make sure that you have a good, solid ownership group in place. And I'd like to see some more diversity with ownership groups coming into whether it's the Fed or the SP or even the ECHL.
Agreed. Let's talk a little bit about the Binghamton Black Bears and everything, because I think I just lost about 50% of our fans talking about the southern part of this and everything. But no, I'm just kidding. Let's talk. All right. So, what are your thoughts on the first 2 seasons of the Black Bears? They've been here for 2 years. They already broke the 100,000 fan mark. And now, fans, what you don't understand. I say this because fans don't look at this crap like me and Gary do, right? We're idiots of this game, and we just love it too much, right? But in 28 home games, we averaged over we got over 100,000 fans. Now, to make sense of that, in the last 10 years between the Senators and the Devils, to break 3,800 average fans with more games, they only did it 2 or 3 times. So think about that for a second. That's a huge number. But what are your thoughts of these first 2 seasons of the Black Bears?
I think that Andreas did a great job with marketing the team even before the first puck was dropped. Sure. And that's why schmucks like me actually tuned into that first game. Because I'm seeing all this news about the Black Bears. Wow, what's going on? I'm not in Binghamton right now. I live about 70 miles away. But I've always, it's always been home. So, I'm getting all this news about this new team, and Andreas did a great job as far as getting the team invested into the community and getting the community to invest in the team. It's really been great. The slogan, "Your city, your team," really was very appropriate, I thought, because Andreas understood that long legacy and that long history and tradition that we've had in this area with hockey in the Southern Tier, and he really did a great job building off of that. And we started off with a pretty good team in the first year, and then obviously he worked very, very hard to improve on it last year. Obviously, we fell a little short of where we wanted to go, but I think big steps were taken, and I've seen that more steps have been taken this year going into this season, even though it's still early. I see a lot of promise and potential with this team.
Let's talk a little bit about the rivalry between Binghamton and Danbury. To me, it was like, wow, instantaneously, I think Danbury took us on, right? I think Binghamton and Binghamton fans were like, hey, we're just happy to have hockey. We're here. We got a good team. We're going to play. And then all of a sudden we played against Danbury, and they were like, F you. We don't like you. We don't want you here. and I don't think they did that maliciously. I think they were like, you're the big, bad AHL wolf that we want to take down. And Danbury's done that twice so far. Does it feel like a classic Binghamton rivalry like we had with Rochester and with Wilkes-Barre? And the reason why I say that is because with Wilkes-Barre, we almost tipped one of their buses once. I was exiting the arena with my wife, and we turned around back, and the Wilkes-Barre Scranton bus was like parked in front of the arena on the side and everything, and there were fans there kind of rocking the bus and everything. And then with Rochester, there were fans that had to be escorted to their seats because of the rivalry was so strong that when you went into a visiting, either going into Rochester or coming into Binghamton, the booster clubs had to be escorted to their seats and everything. Does this Binghamton-Danbury rivalry kind of match up a little bit with Rochester and Wilkes-Barre rivalries?
Oh, I definitely think so. Now, I live in northeastern Pennsylvania, so I heard the other side of it. Wilkes-Barre fans did not like Binghamton fans, vice versa. And I still remember, oh my goodness, when Dennis Bomby signed with the Senators, oh my goodness, this whole area went nuts.
It was a dagger to the heart of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins fans when Dennis Bomby signed.
Yep, it was, and then when I heard Giuseppe being called traitor up in Danbury, I was like, oh my goodness, it's the same thing all over again. It
is, and I think that's good for hockey. I think it's good for the FPHL. I think it's good for Binghamton and Danbury to have that kind of, because I think before Binghamton, Danbury didn't have that hatred to anybody. They didn't have that ammunition.
No, and that's just it. The two oldest franchises, even though they haven't been consecutive through the history of the Fed, are Watertown and Danbury. And there's a little bit of a rivalry there, but nothing really developed like what people envisioned. I think it really felt like the first couple of years in the Fed that was the idea, is that these two teams were going to be fierce rivals. The Privateers and it was the Whalers back then, and it just didn't happen. But then, as soon as the Binghamton Black Bears are announced, it seemed like all our attention went right to Danbury and vice versa.
Yeah.
They looked at us and said, who are these guys? Why are they moving in on our turf?
No, it's true. It's true. So let me ask you question D before question C and everything, because you know what I'm going to ask you next. Is Danbury beatable this year? I mean, really beatable this year?
Okay. I got to refer to a guest that you had a couple weeks ago when Tyson Kirkby came on, and you asked him that question, and you told him, don't give me the PC answer or whatever, just give me what you really feel. And he said he believed that Binghamton can take 12 of the 18 games that they play head-to-head. Yeah. And that was the exact number that I thought of when you asked that question to Tyson Kirkby. In my head, I said, we can take 12.
Wow.
And now, that's not saying that Danbury's bad. They're obviously not. I still am convinced that the Empire Division is going to come down to Binghamton or Danbury on top. But I really feel like Danbury lost a lot. They got hit harder than we did with the SPHL call-up.
Sure.
And you've seen so far, they've played decent, but they haven't really found their identity. Whereas I look at the Black Bears, they know who they are. Mm-hmm. They know what they need to do. They go into the games with a focus.
Yep.
And I haven't seen that yet from Danbury.
Gotcha.
I'm sure Billy McCreary is going to do a great job at fostering that up, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, and this leads us into the last conversation about this, and that's really about what you think of the Black Bears. And I think the mantra, Coach Sherwood hasn't said this specifically to me, but every conversation I've had with him so far, on the record and off the record, feels like offense is your best defense.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And I hate to throw an NHL reference in here, but it really does honestly feel like it to me. I look at this Black Bears team, and the basic principle they're built upon feels very much like those dynasty years of the 1980s Edmonton Oilers. Maybe we don't have Gretzky, maybe we do. But
Nikita Ivashkin has scored 95 goals in 3 seasons in less than 100 games.
And Smith, yeah, exactly. And I look at these guys, and they're just so freewheeling.
Yeah.
And now Edmonton's defense back then was good enough. It wasn't great. It didn't have to be because they were able to score 1 million goals.
Yeah.
But that's really the impression that I get with this team. I was really surprised, quite honestly, when we took on Danbury for the 2 games, and it was so low scoring.
Yeah.
I was really, really shocked by that.
Well, on both team sides, because even Danbury, as physical and gritty as they always are, every single game is always a battle. It feels like a war and everything, right? When it was low scoring, it's like, wait a second here. This is not how Danbury usually beats the shit out of you and then scores goals, right? That's what Dustin Jesseau has brought to the Black Bears, is that he's physical, he's gritty, and he can score goals, and that's the kind of the interesting part. So I find it interesting. Now, my last little point here that I want you to touch upon, my concern with the Black Bears is the lack of natural defensemen. We have Jesse Anderson playing on D, but I would like to have 2 more D men that were natural defensemen that played it more often, because Jesse Anderson, he's a phenomenal puck mover, great assist guy, and everything like that. And I know that can work as a defenseman. A defenseman can do that, but I would really like 2 more just natural defensemen. Is that your concern as well, or do you think that the offense is going to be able to carry this team most of the season?
No, it is a concern to me, and it's been a concern since in July and August when the roster was just getting formulated. And I saw the pieces that Coach Sherwood is bringing in. It's like, okay, great, we're going to score a gazillion goals, but can we keep the puck out of our net? And it was something that concerned me then. It still does. I was very impressed in those 2 games against Danbury how the defense, the defensive 5 plus Jesse, really just tied themselves together, and they took over those games. That's part of the reason why the games were so low scoring, is because the defense played so phenomenally. I have not seen, especially the Saturday night game.
Yeah.
I've not seen the defense play that soundly ever for the Black Bears. I think that was the best defensive game they ever had. But yeah, the concern is, unfortunately, injuries come up, and suspensions come up, and call-ups come up. And what happens then? What if we lose one of these guys? We're already playing with 5, and I know that Jesse's been playing in that role too, but that's not ideal, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, I think you and I know that there are troops on the way.
Yeah.
It might be a while. But I would like to see a little bit more, I guess, just a steadiness, a rhythm put together by the defense. we've seen, we saw a couple games of it, and then we've seen flashes of it, but we've also seen just everything go haywire, and nobody's playing defense, and you end up with a 9-5 game. That is a concern. But I think with what we have right now, I think we're doing well enough. I'd just like to see a little bit more discipline as far as positioning and play, and making sure that you're outletting properly, that you're finding the open guy, that you're being physical in your own end without getting lost in the progress of the play. I think that it could definitely use some buttering up.
Okay, before I let you go, before we do shameless plugs and everything for all the stuff that you have, Adam Johnson played with Wilkes-Barre, was a Pittsburgh Penguins draft choice, playing over in England. And I know some of these guys, they go over and they play in the European leagues to make more money. Usually it's tax-free type of money, and they can just, make a lot more than they would maybe even playing in the American Hockey League. Obviously, an unfortunate accident. I have not watched the video. I'm choosing not to watch the video. I am very close with a lot of hockey players, and I do not want a video of me seeing that affect the way. When Bobby Robbins came on my last show during the AHL years, and he told the story about his concussions and then wanting to plane the crashes, he was going to see Sidney Crosby's head doctor and everything. I just stopped. I was like, I can't talk to these guys no more because I get close to them. I mean, you and I have talked for an hour and a half here, and we've never talked before on the phone. But this is what I do, and I really like to tell the stories of these players and stuff. It is a very tragic thing that happened, and I hope some good comes out of it. And I hope what comes good out of it is the mandatory neck coverings that should be in place. For this. Guys are already wearing visors, and they should be wearing visors, and they should have been wearing visors a long time ago, including helmets for that matter. And there were some very famous hockey players not wearing helmets for a very long time. Your thoughts on the protective gear and the leagues looking out for the players before the players have to look out for themselves?
Yeah. That really hit hard. And I've got my hockey stick set out by the back door.
I as well.
A lot of people do. It's a touchy subject. I mean, players like to be able to play feeling like they're free. They don't want to feel like they're putting on a suit of armor per se. But at what cost? We saw it, unfortunately, Johnson and what happened there. His was the third skating accident or a skate cut accident that happened in the span of 5 days.
Jeez.
And thank God that no one else suffered Adam's fate. But just as helmets became a necessary thing when Bill Masterson died.
Yep.
I really think that the neck and wrist protection is also going to just be. It's going to end up being a natural part of the game. The Penguins, Wilkes-Barre, and the Wheeling Nailers have already mandated.
That's good.
All players have to wear wrist and neck protection. And, I know there's going to be some pushback initially.
Well, there was with the visors. Remember?
Exactly.
Oh, my God. The players, some of the players I talked to were so pissed about the visors, but it's a good thing. It's needed.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that we finally understand is necessary because, something horrible happened.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's going to be good for the game. Because you don't want to see people ending up with injuries like that.
Yeah, I mean, because
you don't want to see people dying on the ice.
No, and I mean, I feel for every single person that was in that arena. I've been there for it, really bad injuries in the past in various amounts of arenas and everything. So I feel for everybody, from the training staff, the doctors, the players that form the circle around, the fans that were told to leave, because of what happened.
Yeah.
I just feel for everybody, because that's traumatic for everybody involved, and it's unfortunate.
Exactly.
And hopefully we don't have to. I know every once in a while we're going to have one of those players have a heart attack or a cardiac arrest type of situation. It's a physical game. We just saw it with the Buffalo Bills a couple years ago. We've already seen it in hockey a few times where a guy gets hit right at the right time, and the heartbeat, it causes that kind of cardiac arrest. I can't remember the exact name of it right now, so I'm not going to try to screw it up. But I don't want to see someone get cut like that or whatever. I don't think anybody should have to see that and whatnot. So, Gary, thank you for commenting on that. I know we didn't have that on the docket, but I really wanted to get your thoughts on that and stuff, because again, you're actually closer to Wilkes-Barre than you are to Binghamton right now, and again, he played 3 years down there, and so there are fans down there that knew him, because even in the AHL, fans get to know some of these players because they do meets and greets and things of that nature. And it hits home. I mean, my rivalry with Wilkes-Barre, between me and the team, that's between me and the team and everything. But, my love for hockey fans is completely different and whatnot.
Exactly.
So thank you very much for doing that. Hey, listen, why don't you promote the damn show? I know it's on like 17 different platforms. Let everyone know how they can listen to the Fed League Flash or watch the Fed League Flash.
Okay, well, what I do is started off with Spotify, so that's, I still do Spotify. It's not the biggest draw, but that's okay. Go to Spotify, download Spotify if you don't have it, because
it's
there's
free.
A lot of great hockey. Yeah, it's free, and there's tons of good hockey podcasts on there. But anyway.
You might be listening to one now.
Exactly. Go to Fed League Flash on Spotify, search for it there and follow me there. Do the Facebook page, which you just type in again, the Fed League Flash, follow me there. And then YouTube is a little bit different. YouTube I try and do just on the weekends, because obviously as a truck driver, I can't be doing YouTube videos while I'm driving. So that address would be youtube.com/@FPHL Flash.
Excellent. Gary, thank you very much for coming on. This is not going to be your only time on this show, and hopefully won't be as long this time, or next time as it is this time. But we're getting to know you. Sometimes the get to know you meeting is a little bit longer than the usual thing. But I really appreciate it. You do great work. Thank you for doing what you do with the Fed League Flash. I've got to be honest with you. It's how I keep up with a lot of the stuff in the league, other than, the occasional thing that I see either on a Facebook group or whatever. But what you do kind of informs me, and I really, really appreciate that.
Oh, not a problem, and I appreciate what you are doing with Power Play Post Show. I was so happy when you decided to bring it back, because, it's perfect. The way you do everything is just perfect. Loving not just the interviews, but the perspective that you put into looking at the games.
Thank you.
It's awesome. It is awesome.
I appreciate
really
that.
Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind words. It's always nice to hear and everything. He is Gary Ryan. It is the Fed League Flash. Check it out on all three of the platforms, Spotify, YouTube, and, of course, Facebook, because he does the Facebook Lives while he's in his truck or his car heading home and everything, and it's great. And I'm always scared he's going to hit something. So, by golly, just be freaking safe out there. I feel like Hill Street Blues. Just be safe out there, boys.
Yes.
And we'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
If you're a Binghamton hockey fan, then you need to check out binghamtonhockey.net. for all your news, stats, information, the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, top 10 lists, profiles, and so much more. That's binghamtonhockey.net. You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. Going to wrap this up real quick. I just want to thank Gary Ryan for coming on the show from the Fed League Flash. Also, the Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. Just search for the Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcast and subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search for Power Play Post Show and share any of our show posts to all your friends. Check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. And again, thank you to Rob Lepolis, our MC, John Petitucci, our musical director, and our guest this week, host, founder, and creator of the Fed League Flash, Gary Ryan. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. I am Bob Howard. This is the Power Play Post Show, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week to the Box Studios Radio Network for all the latest Black Bears news and interviews from around minor league hockey. The Power Play Post Show would like to thank John Patitucci for all the music you hear on the show. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.